Ahead of the 2019 general elections, the contest for the governorship seat in Ogun State appears to be getting more intriguing by the day. This comes as the former governor of the state and APC chieftain, Mr. Olusegun Oshoba, has presented the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, in the state, Mr. Pt.2, to the president. After the meeting, which held behind closed doors, Chief Oshoba told journalists that President Muhammadu Buhari has given the assurance that he will personally be in Ogun State to support the campaign of Mr. Abiodun.
For President, and I, Prince Adedapo Abiodun, I am.
We've come to present our candidate in Ogun State, the candidate of the president, the candidate of APC, and the president has raised his hand and told the world that his candidate in Ogun State is Prince Dapo Abiodun, and that he has no other candidate. His party in Ogun State is APC. He has no other party in Nigeria other than APC. He has assured us that he will personally come to Ogun State to formally present Prince Dapo Abiodun as his candidate. And he assured us that he is clearing the air of any ambiguity whatsoever, of any name dropping, any blackmail, any misinformation that anybody may be peddling, that all elections throughout Nigeria, not just in Ogun State, people must vote for APC and no other party.
And staying with Ogun politics, the state chapter of the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, has alleged that what it describes as a deliberate and orchestrated plan by members of the opposition to subvert the electoral process through provocative and violent tendencies. At a press briefing addressed by the Director General of the Boyega Isiaka Campaign Organization, Mr. Anthony Ojeshina, the party claims that there is a plan to disrupt the security of the state. The party under President and the security agencies said they would intervene before the situation gets out of hand. Moving on to other stories now, the police have vowed to remain at the home of the senator representing Kogi West, Dino Melaye, in Abuja until he is apprehended. According to the police, he laid siege to Mr. Melaye's home hours earlier. The senator is said to have locked himself in part of the house and has refused arrest. In a statement, the police spokesman, Jimoh Moshood, explains that Senator Dino Melaye is being sought for by the police to answer to the case of contempt, an attempted culpable homicide in the shooting of a police officer, Sergeant Danjuma Saliu, while on duty allegedly by Senator Melaye and armed thugs in Kogi State on July the 19th, 2018. The statement adds, quote, the police investigators have written the clerk of the National Assembly for Senator Melaye to report at Kogi State Police Command, CID Lokoja, for him to answer to these offences against him under investigation in Kogi State Police Command, but he has bluntly refused to report himself to the police, end of quote. It says the offence for which Senator Melaye is being investigated is capital in nature, and the force will not tolerate attacks on its personnel by any individual, no matter how highly placed. In the meantime, Senator Dino Melaye has promised to make himself available to the police next week. Senator Melaye told Channels Television that he is currently away from Abuja and insists that he is not a criminal and has no reasons to run from the police. He accused the police of disobeying court orders to release his international passport to him.
Anyway, I was informed that my house has been invaded. Over 40 policemen inside the compound and over 50 outside the gate. And my domestic staff have all been molested, beaten, handcuffed, and taken away. Presently outside Abuja, I'm a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I cannot run away. I will make myself available as soon as I'm back to town next week. There's no need for this I'm not a criminal. I've not done anything wrong. The police have arraigned me in 7 courts already. As I'm speaking, I'm in 7 courts with them. There's a judgment that my passport be given to me, and for the past 5 months, court order on the IT to return my international passport. He has refused to obey that order. Then one will begin to wonder that if the police cannot obey court order, how do they expect citizens to respect the police? However, since April, my security details have been withdrawn by the Nigerian police. The resolution of the Senate for them to restore that has been ignored. And all this is to expose me to attack, is to open me to make me vulnerable. And but I thank God Almighty, who is the supreme controller of the universe, has been protecting me. He has been my shield and buckler. I cannot run away. I'm not a criminal. I will make myself available to the force headquarters as soon as I return Monday or Tuesday.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, has condemned the police invasion of the residence of Senator Dino Melaye in Abuja. Now, the party says that it rejects what it calls the Gestapo-like attacks on Senator Melaye's residence and condemns that the invasion of security officials to vacate the premises immediately. In a statement, the PDP spokesman, Mr. Kola Ologbodiyan, describes the action as, quote, part of the larger machination of the Buhari presidency to use state apparatus of power, particularly the police under IGP Idris, to harass, intimidate and clamp down on opposition members in a bid to create fear and subjugate the opposition ahead of the 2019 general elections, end of quote. According to Mr. Ologbodiyan, it is devious of the police, which had initially distanced itself from Senator Dino Melaye, earlier alarmed on the plot forcefully to arrest him and inject him with poisonous substance, to turn around now and invade his residence. The PDP describes the alleged series of attacks and harassment of its party leaders by security officials as a clear recipe for anarchy and a political crisis that is capable of destabilizing the nation. The year 2018 has been one with a mixed grill of economic performance following the recovery from the recession of 2 years ago. With the 2019 general elections in view, the attendant uncertainties create a gloomy picture for opportunities. In continuation of our 2018 assessment, Channels Television's business correspondent and editor, Boson Omofai, examined the state of the real economy in response to the actions of the fiscal and monetary authorities.
A report released this month by Lagos-based investment bank Vertiva Capital says Nigeria's real economy's modest recovery is continuing, even as politics is in the limelight. Since 2018 started, the country's post-recession recovery continues, but at a slow pace and below potential, averaging some 1.5%. But while the Buhari's administration continues to spend fast and furiously on infrastructure, holding the reins of petrol pump price at 145 naira per litre and throwing strong tactics to collect more taxes and recover stolen assets, the headwinds are pushing back.
The GDP growth has not been impressive in my view because to date it's around 1.8% when our population is growing at over 3%. No wonder, therefore, that we are now the poverty capital of the world.
The economy's structural weaknesses remain unchanged. Flooding and steady deadly violence in north and central regions contributed to a sluggish 1.2% GDP in second quarter, pushing agriculture GDP to multi-decade lows. But despite these downsides, the administration remained undaunted.
We provided for 30% capital expenditure from 2016, despite earning over 60% less than in the previous 4 years. We invested so far a total of 2.7 trillion in capital spend, the highest ever in the history of the country. This covers investments in rail, in roads, in power, and in dams.
The shadows of the 2019 elections begin to show around mid-year. Foreign portfolio investors began selling down on their positions. Direct investments became sluggish, and the finance minister, Kemi Adeosun, resigned in controversial circumstances. Bearing these developments, the monetary authorities remain vigilant on the economy, investment, and the markets, helping to keep the economy going.
While tightening will strengthen the stability of the foreign exchange market, because of its dampening effect on the demand for foreign exchange, it was, however, convinced that this would simultaneously dampen investment growth, widen the output gap, depress aggregate demand, and weaken output growth.
As the year comes to a close, President Buhari's economy is still grabbing the headlines. His social investment spending, such as trader money, is a crowd puller. His business improvement indices get some applause, while taming higher petrol prices and electricity tariffs and rescuing state governments with 1.6 trillion naira and dares others. On the flip side, the higher minimum wage remains contentious. Unemployment figure at 25.2% is frightening, even as population growth gallops and GDP growth is lagging. If you add the debt portfolio of $25 billion, 2018 would be a year to remember, depending, however, on what you wish to remember. Boston Namofaye, Channels Television News.
Let's now look more closely at the issues regarding the economy in the past 1 year. And we're now being joined live from our Abuja studios by Professor of International Economic Relations from the Covenant University, Professor Jonathan Aremu. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on the News at 10. How much of impact would you say the federal government's economic recovery policies and, of course, those focus labs that they had in place, how much of that have had an impact on the economy this year?
Thank you. Yes, government discovered that this current economic recovery and growth plan must actually be complemented by another program. And that is why the Vice President came up with this idea of the Focus Lab. What is the Focus Lab? The Focus Lab is to ensure that the various people, stakeholders that are involved in the economy are put under a sort of a room. Not necessarily a room, but they are put under the same umbrella to be able to work and make sure they emerge with implementation policy of the EGRP. And that is exactly what has been happening. And a lot has been achieved as a result of Focus Lab. You will discover that right now we are having regular light across the country. I was listening to a news yesterday, somewhere in the northern part of the country, they now have 24-hour supply of light. That is a result of heavy investment in that particular sector. And you know that point number 2 under the Focus Lab is power and gas. Number 1 is agriculture. That number 1, which is agriculture, we are having a lot of very wonderful positive results. You can see that a lot of production, particularly in rice, is now available in the country. Other crops in the country also, under the agricultural products, they are doing well. And then the third area under the Focus Lab is that of the manufacturing and processing sector. And they are targeting that as well. But all what they are doing is to make sure that both the private as well as the public sector come together to be able to bring out an implementation strategy.
If I may just come in there, my apologies.
That is the essence of the Focus Lab.
If I may just come in here, Nigeria did quite a lot of borrowing this year. With a return to the Eurobond market, we saw that as well. That on its own externalized the debt, but at higher rates. What's your view to this impact on the economy?
Well, thank you. Let me say that there's nothing wrong in borrowing once debt is productive. But when debt is not productive, that is when it's not sustainable. A productive debt is a debt in which it can repay itself as well as service itself well, in addition to adding more to the economic growth. So you recall that even Europe, after the Second World War, $30 billion was pumped into that particular area, and it actually ensured that the economy bounced back. So the idea of borrowing is not that borrowing is bad, but can the borrowing produce more than what is taken now? so that it can pay what has been borrowed, service it very well, as well as have certain things which the economy can rely upon. When borrowing is dead weight, it's not productive. It's just consuming, like what Konjo warned us in 2012 and 2014, that Nigeria is now borrowing to pay salary. That kind of borrowing is not good. It's not sustainable. It's going to make the future generation to continue paying what they did not actually consume. And that is when debt is not good. But when you look at the economy now, you can see that a lot of infrastructural facilities are being developed. So many roads, railways working. So if we have to borrow to be able to make sure that those infrastructure which are necessary for economic development and growth, I think it's a good idea.
I think that's also a good place to let it rest. I must thank you indeed, Professor Jonathan Aremo, Professor of International Economic Relations from the University, the Covenant University. Thank you so much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.